in 2019, 2020, there's a guy up in Edmonton of all places, and he's working on a protocol for streaming money. So streaming sats in real time, so you can pay for things and you're streaming the sats at the same time. So you're only paying for what you use. And so you could never do that before. It's impossible. But now you can.
For anybody who's not been actively following all the developments in the AI space, you could wake up and try to orient yourself and realize that the world has really changed quite significantly in the last year of what's available to people.
The thing with the metaverse is, they came out of the wrong way. They tried to build it for people. The metaverse is for robots and AI. And once that is populated, robots and AI, people will join so they can talk to their robots in the metaverse. Not the other way around.
Welcome back, everybody, to Hosting Bitcoin, where we get to explore the people who are building the infrastructure for the next era of money. And today's guest is operating at the frontier of what Bitcoin becomes, not just as a store of value, but as a global real-time payments network. Shone Anstey is the CEO of Liquid Technologies, LQWD, a company that's focused on scaling the Bitcoin Lightning Network to enable instant, low-cost transactions across the globe. But this is a conversation that goes well beyond just payments, because when you combine Lightning with AI and autonomous systems, you begin to unlock something entirely new: machine-to-machine economies, real-time coordination, and a totally new layer of the internet where value moves as seamlessly as information. And as the CEO, Shone sits at the intersection of infrastructure, capital, and vision, helping shape what this next phase of Bitcoin actually looks like in practice. And today we're diving into Lightning adoption, the real-world use cases, and what happens when machines can transact as easily as humans. Shone, thank you so much for joining me on Hosting Bitcoin.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, Beau.
So we're going to talk about a lot today, and I think it's probably the most interesting intersection of trends that we've got right now in Bitcoin and AI. Everybody's got a question about how Bitcoin and AI are interrelated, and there's so many different ways you can go into that. But I think that what we talk about today is probably the most interesting and kind of leading edge thing that we're seeing. Before we get into the meat, though, I really want to get a chance to know you. I don't know as much about your background other than what I've been able to glean from public information and friends of ours. So I would love to learn your story of how did you get here? How did you get into Bitcoin? What led you to starting and building Liquid? Just unpack as much as you can for context and background for me and everybody who's listening.
Absolutely. So I've been in tech since the mid 90s, the internet days, and rolling all that out and dealing with all the craziness where people thought we were a bunch of scammers and hackers and the internet was going to destroy the planet and you couldn't get a bank account and the government's going to shut it down and all those things. And so it came into Bitcoin early on, 2011, really heard about it. Started mining 2012, should have done more in 11, but did well and continued to build it out, but came into it naturally because looking at it, we just said, yeah, of course you're going to have a native payment layer to the internet. It's the most natural thing. So there wasn't a lot of convincing at that point for me to understand it. But what the rest of the rabbit hole was understanding the world of finance and then breaking down, fiat currency and, all the different banking stuff that's gone on there and all the problems we've had certainly after '08. And so that was kind of my initial part into it. Since that part, I did some Bitcoin mining, did some consulting for a Bitcoin mine at the time, which we called industrial, which is nothing more than like 100 S2 miners in a warehouse, and but we mine blocks and stuff like that, and then started looked at the industry and said, we're going to have to do some hard things to get through here. Started a compliance company called Blockchain Intelligence Group. And I took that public in 2017 with my co-founder, Lance. And we were able to, we hung on, we raised capital, we built out. And then during the downturn with Quadriga up here in Canada, where it was a fraudulent exchange and others went down, we decided to we acquired a company called Netcoins, which is another exchange. Put it together with the capital we had. We think at the time we still had 12 million in our bank account. And we had our compliance company, and we were able to get it licensed, get the exchange fully licensed in Canada. So as what should have been the first, but it was actually the third fully licensed regulated exchange in Canada, and it really took off from there and became a thing. So we stepped in where the industry faltered, and we knew Puerto Rico was offside at the time. We didn't know. They refused to meet with us. And we saw the data and our stuff, and we're like, we know there's something wrong here. And sure enough, unfortunately, that went the way it went. But certainly trying to bring our public company status at the time and the capital to fill in for that for what was going on there. So in 2019, really kept a close eye on Lightning Network. Always looked at it, decided like this is going to be one of the big things. You're going to scale the internet the same way. You're going to scale Bitcoin the same way we scale the internet. I remember this playbook. And one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have nodes and channels, and it's going to be infrastructure all over the world. And it's going to take time to build out, but you got to go early. So it really started building 2019. And we managed to, because we had success in the public markets, we're able to leverage that to pre-raise capital and go public in the Canadian markets. Again, the junior markets, which is our version of the venture cap. And then from there, we were able to continue to immediately buy Bitcoin and build out. So we were Treasury 1.0 or Treasury company from day one. It's in our prospectus, but we're not a finance company because we put that Bitcoin to work. So, and since then we've been running, we have about 18 nodes in 18 countries and thousands of channels, and we're seeing transaction volume continue to climb, and we continue to build and build. And now we have major catalyst with AI, the agentic web, as they say, and it's all coming together in that.
You've seen lots of different stages of the evolution of this industry and kind of the surrounding context that birthed it as well. But Lightning specifically is, it's a niche within a niche that people already don't really understand very much of. So maybe it would be useful. We can take this piece by piece. But what exactly does Liquid do, which is the public company you're referring to that's kind of building in Lightning?
Excuse me. We're a Lightning Network service provider, and we provide liquidity and we route transactions. But before we get into that, I think we got to get into like why Lightning exists. And also one of the things I like to talk about is, what is Bitcoin at its core? And why does it dovetail into the internet and all these things that from my background, because it kind of sets the stage, and it'll tell people how I think and why I think from all my years of experience. So when you break it down and people ask me, what is Bitcoin? And of course, the usual answer is if I ask that question, what is Bitcoin? And people, it's money, it's hard money, it's digital gold, it's great. Those are all fine answers. But if you actually break it down and you really step back and say, what is it? It is a trust protocol that extends the very capability of the internet itself. What do I mean by that? So if you know how the internet's made, it's made up of 7 technology layers. We call this the OSI stack. It's in all the textbooks. You can Google it. It's everywhere. Layer 1, that's just the Wi-Fi, the jack on the wall. Layer 7, those are the websites. And there's a bunch of other layers that came around over time to make the internet work as it is right now, literally right now, as you and I are using it. Back then, we thought the internet was worth $200 billion. That was, I think, a Barron's article came out in 1999. The internet was worth $200 billion. And people would tell me, why do I want email? I'm just going to go to the post office. I'll never shop online. I'll never put my credit card online. I'll never do this. The government will shut it down. The banks threatened to take your bank account away because we had a .com in our name, and all these different things here. But ultimately, this network effect and of the internet hit its iPhone moment 2006 and never really looked back, and we knew it wouldn't. By 2010, they estimate the internet's worth $20 trillion. What's the internet worth today? What's it worth today? Well, commerce-wise, I see 55 to 65 trillion. But what is it actually worth? Its value. Its value to society is off the charts. If it went away, we'd have a major societal problem. So its value is off the charts. Now, when you look at Bitcoin and say, what did it do? It solved for trust. Okay, it is actually literally the 8th layer of the OSI stack. We've now extended the very plumbing of the internet with a new layer that solved for trust, something we tried to do in the 90s. We failed repeatedly. And its first use case is money. Because what is money at the end of the day? Money is trust. And it'll be used in many ways that we don't even know yet. Because literally, this is the everything we see now is just a continuation of the revolution of the internet. And we're on to the next major phase here. And so when I look at Bitcoin, I say, here we are, this 8th layer. We know that the current internet's worth an infallible number, but we think the trust layer of the internet is only worth less than 2 trillion. It's literally going to change money. It's going to change the society runs in the next 200 years. I've seen this game before. And there's going to be all the naysayers. Oh, it won't scale. It won't do this and never do that. We'll never have video. We'll never do voice over the internet. We'll never do streaming. It's nobody will pay for streaming music. They want to own it. It'll just there's always the negative. But ultimately, technology is like water, and it seeps through. When it's 10x better than whatever's out there, it gets adopted, and this, is 100x better. And so, that sets the stage for why, I've been in Bitcoin with deep conviction, because I'm like, yeah, this has just been my career. Now the question is, I'll stop there.
Well, the way that you frame that, I think, is really important. And at least I've never thought of Bitcoin as a layer of the internet. I think, and most people probably consider, even people who are in the space, consider it sort of a standalone entity, which it could be characterized as. But why is it so important to characterize it as a layer of the internet itself? Or why do you take that position?
I take that position because, well, the OSI stack is a loose series of layers that kind of work together. And then so the DNS layer, which people may not want to know what that is, but you can type in google.com. But back in the day, you'd have to type in an IP address, and you'd have to know what it was, and it would change. And so eventually they created DNS, and so they created another layer of the internet. And so all these things came about to make things function. What we've never had in there is how do you create trust without a third party? It's always been Microsoft DRM or some other third party in the way. And how do you do it at scale where no one is in the way? And that's where Bitcoin steps in. So I see it as just, yes, it's extending that OSI stack. It has tremendous value, and it will scale within the similar concepts the way that we scale the internet. And we didn't just use one big blockchain. We had other layers working together, that made it scale. And so that's where Lightning comes in terms of how do you get, this really, really secure layer. You guys mine Bitcoin. You guys are doing some great things there. It's ultra secure network. But how do you get it to actually scale? And so that's where Lightning comes in as the layer two that inherits the security from layer one. You can transfer your Bitcoin to it. Miners like yourselves process the transactions. And when it's on there, it is a peer-to-peer network. Why is this important? And I've got some crippled notes here, but ultimately, why does peer-to-peer matter? Because Lightning Network is architected like the internet. If you're going to scale to meet the needs of the internet with an open payment layer that anyone can use, anyone can hop on, there are no restrictions. Anybody can run it, they can do whatever they want. And if that sounds familiar, like the internet, it's because it is the internet. And when you route a transaction across it, it may go from hop to hop till it finds its final location, similar to how your data on the internet goes from hop to hop through the ISPs and gets to its final location. In our case, we call it LSPs because we're routing transactions on behalf of people and making sure it gets to where it's got to go.
So, at the risk of just beating this to death, I mean, this is really landing for me in a different way that I hope translates to the people that are listening, which is you cannot overstate that this isn't some isolated new tech that's being built. This is functionally Bitcoin itself is like a completion of the functionality of the internet. It's something that makes what we all know and interact with every day more functionally complete. And I think that I've never thought about it that way personally. I've sort of always put it in its own bucket, like it's as big as the internet, or maybe it's bigger than the internet, is a way that many people would phrase what
That's
Bitcoin and then by
understandable.
extension Lightning are.
Sure, and that's totally understandable. And there's certain other networks that run around the internet, like Tor and other things. But ultimately, what is the underpinning for everything we do? TCP/IP, and then the other networks run on top of it. And so the protocol, is pretty well protocol take not take most, they take all. But there's other protocols that may do certain things. So that may be, this is a Bitcoin podcast, but there's protocols like Solana that may have very specific use cases. So I'm a tech person. I'm not going to sit there and slag other networks. I'm a Bitcoiner. We know what we're building. But we also had other protocols for the internet. We have FTP. We have email protocols. We have private protocols that companies put together. It'll be used in ways that we don't even know yet. And people will use their creativity, and that's the green for it. Bitcoin at the end of the day and the Lightning Network is a morally agnostic trust protocol that doesn't care who you are or what you do. It just simply runs. And it does its job, and it does it very well with incredible engineering, which actually, when you face it, it's very elegant engineering, which means it has legs, and it's solved for a major computer science problem, which means it has incredible value. So Lightning is how we bring it to the masses for for day-to-day payments, because Lightning Network, and I'll get into that here. So for the users out there, what is the Lightning Network? The Lightning Network extends Bitcoin's payment protocol to be able to do really, really fast microtransactions. You can send a penny of value across the world to anybody else. Now, how does it work? So the way it works, we call it nodes and channels. It sounds kind of confusing, but what is that? A node is just a server or a computer somewhere in the world running the open source Lightning Network software. Anyone is free to use it. And you establish payment channels with other node operators. Now, the catch is, in order to establish a channel with other node operators, you must have Bitcoin on that channel. It is a technical requirement of the network. So you establish the size of the channel in sats, and it works like an abacus where stuff will route across that network till it finds its place and the network rebalances. And it's like internet traffic that we talked about. So we may get a transaction coming into one of our nodes. We may say it go across a couple of our nodes, and it'll get routed back out to its end destination or the next hop in the chain. Very similar to how when I want to go to google.com, local provider will route it out to another provider and it'll pass through several hops, eventually get to Google servers, and the data then comes back to me. Similar in concept. And there's a reason it's similar in concept because you need to scale payments the same way you scale the internet. And so this actually plays right into what's coming up here, which is the AI and AI payments and the agentic web. I don't know why we call it the agentic web. That seems to be a term. I just, and the longest time everybody was talking about AI for 10 years ago, and I said, well, that's more like machine learning actually, but it's a good marketing name. But now it is AI, and that's what people get, and we use it. But and what does AI want? Well, AI wants mathematical payments, and it needs to be able to scale. So Lightning Network is well suited for that. It may use other networks as well, but ultimately, if you asked an AI agent what network it would prefer, it's going to give you it's going to want open protocol, no restrictions, and ultra fast, and it can scale. So we talk about the scaling for AI agents. I think it was Stripe that came out saying we're going to need 1 billion transactions a day, or 1 billion transactions a second is coming up at some point. And they're right. And so how do you scale that? Is Solana going to scale to 1 billion transactions a second? If you're going to go to Lightning Network, and why? Because it's with nodes and channels, it's architected the same way the internet is. There's really no restrictions on the speed. It's just simply the speed of the gear, and having enough liquidity on the network. And so this is why it plays very, very well into AI and AI agents.
Yeah, at risk of slowing you down, I just want to backfill some things that you're talking about that I think are important for people to really understand. And that is Lightning is one solution to the scaling problem of Bitcoin. So it's a way to make sure that you don't have to wait 10 minutes for settlement, and that you can process transactions with lower fees, essentially. Basically, make sure that the protocol and the value settlement can scale to the point where it's usable at a second to second or even millisecond to millisecond basis, not just between people, but increasingly the the new wave of users of the internet and all the protocols therein, these agents, which are just starting to come on the scene in a way that I think people are really starting to appreciate. It's been a concept for a while. We've talked about it. This is not a new idea necessarily, but I would argue we're just now seeing this actually come to fruition and show up in the world.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and you're right. So if you're going to send $1 million across the Bitcoin, you're going to use layer one. You'll send it there. But if you need to send, small ultra payments, you're going to use layer two. And there are other layer two solutions, and there'll be a number of technologies that will make it will power things going forward. But certainly, Lightning Network is now people understand why it exists, and why Bitcoin matters, because computers want to pay computers, and they want to do so in math and with instant finality. And because it's not just about payments. This is the thing that people are talking about, like, oh, my clawbot's going to pay so and so, etc. It'll be used for authentication. It'll be used for security. It'll be used for the AI agents accessing APIs and other endpoints, and getting the data that it needs to actually as they act almost autonomous to do things. And so how are you gonna identify your agent? Well, a small micropayment can identify whoever owns that wallet is the owner of that key. So it effectively is, if the Lightning wallet or the Bitcoin wallet address is effectively the agent's soul. So I call it the agentic soul. And this is going to be something very important because it is the ultimate source of truth. If you can send a microsat, then you are legit. that is my robot, and I know I can send and communicate securely with it because it owns the keys, the private keys behind the wallet. So that'll be a bigger aspect of it than I think we understand yet.
So one question I have for you is you've determined that Lightning is the protocol you're building on, but it's not the only scaling protocol that's been introduced. There's Fedimints, there's
Arc.
Liquid protocol, there's other scaling protocols. So I'd be curious if you could just do a quick like why Lightning?
Well, Lightning is, to me, it's, there's no like Arc and these other ones in the they have federated, you have federation members. I like Lightning because there are no federation members. It's just truly open. Like you want to hop on, you want to play, you can. There's no restrictions. You don't have to rely upon 25 servers around the world staying up or everybody agreeing or something happening. Or it's the kind of network where it can't be shut down. There's no possible way that the government can shut down or go after the people involved, who's running a federation node or whatever it may be. Now, those may be fine networks and they'll do what they're going to do and they may have great success. From my perspective, Lightning is much more pure play internet and with the same ethos of when we had the internet back in the day. And back in the day, you still had a segment, my day, back, you still had segmentation between university networks and public, commercial networks, and you couldn't use one for the other. And I remember if you put, if you had ads on your website, you were like, you would get called out, and the internet maximalists would light the torches and like, well, how are we supposed to make money? Well, raise money from investors. Well, it's going to run out eventually. How do we can't monetize it? The internet's about free speech and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, look, it's going to be used for that and everything else. You don't get to dictate it. This is an open protocol and it's out there and it will be used in ways that it's used, mostly for good, some for bad. We just keep building. And same thing for Bitcoin. It'll be mostly good. Some people will, bad people will do bad things regardless of the technology. Doesn't mean you don't stop building great tech. You just keep building and we push forward to bring it to humanity.
So now in hindsight, I think it's reasonable to say everybody can see that the Lightning Network is the most used scaling solution on the Bitcoin network. It's gotten a lot of traction, but at the point that you were first starting out with Liquid, that wasn't necessarily the case. No. So how did you, that was not necessarily an easy decision to start a public company on Lightning services at the point where it was pretty brand new.
Thank you. Well, it's, you had to be a little crazy, I suppose, in tech, but ultimately, we want to be, I just looked at it and said, look, this, and I knew it even when it first came out in 2015, 16, early on, I'm like, this is going to be iterative. It's going to take some time, but ultimately the architecture is similar to the architecture that I grew up with in my career that made sense to scale. And it just, in my gut, just felt, I can feel it. It feels normal. I've seen this before. I've worked with this before. And back then, you would go to the internet exchange, so in Vancouver, Seattle, or whatever, the Seattle Internet Exchange, and you go into the data center rooms, the meet me rooms for the networks, and you might see another guy like you or somebody else and be like, hey, you want to swap routes? And you run a cable next to it. Next thing you're bleeding 15% of your traffic off, and the race was on to go out and build network connectivity. And the more connectivity you had, the more valuable your network actually became. And so a lot of people, I think in the early days of Lightning were like, hey, you just need one giant node and that's all you're doing. I'm like, no, there's going to be a time. That's why we have 18 nodes in 18 countries where latency will matter for streaming money. People have a tendency to want to connect to node in their local area. And we want to be able to blanket the world and be able to have great connectivity and bring that great connectivity to everyone. And we'll see people duplicating our model, I'm sure. But our job has been just to get out in front, get as much Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and put that Bitcoin to work. And then we literally are using AI to help manage part of the network, not directly in the keys, but we do have a system in place with all the data we've accumulated, we're able to actually compile that data and analyze it and auto adjust routes. And soon our next step is to have a fully autonomous network, which is entirely run by AI. And can handle everything at scale. And so that's where it's going. And it's going to be, and the network itself will be the true open source payment network. And one of the reasons I looked at it is also because back in the 95, 96, 97, actually, response code 402 came out. And for those who don't know what that is, first off, what is a response code? Response code is simply how your web browser communicates with the web server. If you're ever on a website and you get a page not found, error code 404, that's a response code. They're built into every web server and every web browser from the late 80s, early 90s, and it's used everywhere. And so this is the way that your browser communicates with the server. And so response code 402 came out, which means payment required, but there was nothing that could run at the scale of the internet who could actually take advantage of it. Yes,
Hmm.
Microsoft could put some in there, but nobody wants to run. The world's not going to run on Microsoft payment. No, not on Microsoft. I'm just saying that it's not a true solution. And you needed an actual open payment layer where the network did all the trust. In other words, Bitcoin. And now with Bitcoin Lightning, now you've got that perfect tie-in to what we were missing. And this is why I looked at it and said, we were missing this before. We couldn't do it, but now we can. And this Lightning network will scale because it's architected the same way that we need to for the internet. And that matters. So how will Lightning be used? It won't just be used for Bitcoin. There are going to be stable coins across it. There'll be other protocols going across it. It will be it's an open network. It'll be used in ways that people want to use it. Bitcoin will still be the key marker going across it, and it's perfectly designed for AI. And I've been working with my own for the company. I actually was building on a CLI wallet for the company, and for stuff that we're gonna talk about and introduce coming up to Vegas. So all part of wallets for agents, put that way.
So cool. And this probably will lead into a little bit more about agents, but you said something that probably most people have not heard before. We've all heard about sending money. Most people have not heard about streaming money. What does that even mean?
Yeah, early on in the Lightning, in 2019, 2020, there's a guy up in Edmonton of all places, and he's working on a protocol for streaming money. So streaming sats in real time, so you can pay for things and you're streaming the sats at the same time. So you're only paying for what you use, and so you could never do that before. It's impossible, but now you can, which is amazing. So it's a real breakthrough in that front. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up in these protocols as the network continues to get more traction on it. We're going to see a lot more development and people doing crazy things with it. And this is what I love about being in tech for all these years is like you build stuff out and you're part of things. And initially the design is like, hey, we're gonna have a cool website with a spinning globe on the side there and some fire, and you could look at some pictures and send an email. And then and now you look at what people have done with the tech and the internet and the iteration process over the years, and it's just the creativity is always something that I'm like, wow, I would never have thought of that. That's really cool, and it's just amazing to see people, building on top of what other people are building, and just everything coming out of it. I think you're going to see a lot more of that continue to happen in Lightning and our Bitcoin space as well. And you're seeing a huge iteration. It really kicked off for me January 27th this year, and Lightning Labs is all over, and all these other Lightning companies are just, hey, AI agents, it's the thing. And so I wouldn't say reinvigorated the industry, but it really connected the dots for a lot of people to like, oh, we get why it matters. Computers need to pay computers and they need to transact and they're going to do things. And it's not going to be just about people because computers want Bitcoin. They want mathematical money. They don't want US dollars. They may get programmed to use US dollars and stable coins, but ultimately, if you ask them, they would take math over fiat, which is be a funny conversation to have with Grok, right?
Well, what's interesting is, for years this was just kind of theory and like a fun idea to play around with, but it's kind of all at once really hit as, no, this is here now and accelerating very quickly. I mean, for anybody who's not been actively following all the developments in the AI space, you could wake up and try to orient yourself and realize that the world has really changed quite significantly in the last year of what's available to people. I mean, I'm not, I'm very technical, but I'm not a software developer by any means. And some of these tools have really just broken down any sort of barrier to building whatever you can imagine. And it's
Absolutely.
pretty incredible what people can wire up with natural language at this point. And it
Yes.
just opens your eyes to how close we are to these things really being able to operate with complex objectives fully autonomously with very little oversight and direction from us as people.
And that's true. And for myself, I've had a good history with engineering and understanding concepts. I always bring coders in. I've always done a little coding for myself, but I would never call myself a coder. But now, Microsoft VS Code with Opus built into it, I've been able to iterate through things very quickly. You still have to have a knowledge how to put it together, but it's incredible what can be done, and it's just like I'm spending more time building stuff out than I ever have, and I've barely slept over the last 3 months. So, and I've had to force myself, and I'm hearing this from other engineers as well. Like I've got to force myself to go to sleep and wake up at a proper time, otherwise I'll get up at 4 in the morning and just keep going because the iteration process is so fast and you're building out some really amazing things. And of course, you have to have engineering principles behind it, and you need to have one of them, good security understanding, good architecture understanding. So, replacing great engineers, no, but great engineers have become 10x better or even 100x better because they can they understand how it goes together. And so it's empowering. It's a very empowering for the industry. You're going to see a lot of amazing tools come out. Certainly at LQWD at Liquid, we're using it. And myself personally, I ended up building up a side project called Open Cure Labs. The guy who got they found a vaccine for his dog. Did that whole thing there. So it's
Yeah,
like, well, you know what? That was a great story, right?
it was
Um,
amazing.
yeah, amazing. So the guy, he's somebody kind of like myself and yourself, and wants to get a vaccine for his dog, and works with machine learning. Goes to university, is able to find an mRNA vaccine, shrinks the tumor, and they used AI to find the sequencing and ultimately grok. And so I thought to myself, I could bang something out like this, so it'll be a tool that others could use, and it's open source and free, and it'd be a great opportunity to really get in here and figure out the structure of it. And I ended up using NVIDIA's Nemo Claw, and
Mhm.
as soon as it came out, like 3 days after, one of my own engineers is like, "Yeah, I don't know if we." I'm like, "We're going to use this inside of Liquid. All of this is now it for sure." Because, but it's not production code. My response is like, "There is nothing production code right now. Zero. Okay, it's all like so. Either you get on the rocket, or get left behind. But you got to. So I've been using that, but within that, then you're able to, it's been amazing to use that Nemo Claw is orchestrating other agents in for this Open Cure Labs thing that I built out, and it's MIT license. It's given away. But ultimately, we used all that knowledge, and we're now using that inside of Liquid itself, to orchestrate agents to do what we want.
And for people who are not fully up to speed with this, I mean, agents can mean a lot of things, but in practice, especially when you're doing very large projects, like Sean or I might spin up an agent that then spins up 10, 20, 50, 100 sub agents that all have their own sort of guiding direction in life, if you will, and are all taking actions as if we just birthed into existence 100 different intelligences. And so it's like you're not limited by natural resources or really anything in terms of the population growth of this new entity and the work that they are doing in the digital world, at least at this point. It's pretty profound how much activity is this sort of new, very new intelligence on the internet.
Yeah, and that's well said. It's definitely, you can spin stuff up. They all have specific jobs. You have an orchestrator now, thanks to NVIDIA, which tries to keep, some controls in place and some parameters for your project. And you can set them loose or set them with parameters, but ultimately, they never get tired. They never go to sleep. They can iterate endlessly. And I feel like I'm the bottleneck, and I've been
Mhm.
trying to put in a lot of controls personally, a lot of security scripts before things are committed to a repo code wise, and all these different things that are out there to make sure the plans and the documentation. But the biggest problem is making sure that I am clear on the documentation and the plans and everybody else. So that has been one of the bigger challenges, is just to keep a handle on it, because AI agents are moving so much faster. And but what is really struck me with is just how fast they can iterate through code, and that you're going to see a lot of great things come out now, because I know Google mentioned the other day they're not going to allow apps in their store that are written by vibe coders. I don't think that's going to hold up very long, because first off,
No.
Gemini 3.1 is pretty good coding. Their next version is going to be great. Opus 4.6 is amazing. And the next version is going to be even better. And I've read, listened to the podcast. Some really great engineers who are out there going, look, 90% of my coding is the AI agent coding. I'm the bottleneck too, just like I'm saying. And I'm like, so those days are gone. Now, the bigger part is going to be the code review and the architecture review. And so for myself, I've created scripts that'll be like, okay, this will be all the internal security checks, and then there's another AI agent that acts as tries to break in and tries to do damage, but and then we get the feedback, and so using it as a full security tool, you can use it in many different ways, but that's how I'm doing it because I'm like, look, my human brain can't keep up, but I can
No.
architect, and we can have it iterate through and try to put the controls, and then ask it what other controls it would want to put in place instead of trying to make it all up on my own. And you'd be surprised. And sometimes I've even gone as far as like, look, I'm in Opus, I'm in Code Editor. I'll go to Gemini Pro, ask it what it thinks, get some ideas, bounce it off each other, and the conversation between the two AI agents is kind of funny sometimes. And what did Opus call ChatGPT? It called ChatGPT pedantic. And Grok didn't have very nice things to say about it either. I'm not knocking ChatGPT. This is literally what the the agents on those networks are talking about each other. So kind of funny. So they are aware of these different networks, which is kind of funny.
It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, you already said it. You are the bottleneck. I mean, it's really impossible to keep up with. These things can build faster than we can review. And so it introduces this very interesting development process where you can have a full adversarial engineering process where something is building, another one is auditing, another one is, the sort of like security white hat team trying to find vulnerabilities. It's unbelievable what we can spin up. And what I want to ask is, you have a very interesting dashboard on the Liquid website that shows total transactions that are routing, and it looks like, I don't want to put words out there that aren't true, but it looks like there's been a pretty significant spike up in just the last few months of
There has
transaction
been.
volume over the last few months.
Yeah, incidentally, for any shoulders listening, we do have a new website and a bunch of updates coming out before Vegas. I'm not sure when this podcast goes out, but we're working on a bunch of stuff there to give that metric information, really make it clear. And incidentally, that data we have out there, we've given it to River Financial, and we usually have a CSV download. So we give that data away, or most of it. We have some internal stuff, of course, we don't provide, but the routing. So we have definitely seen that. And what we're doing in our company is that we use Lightning Labs right now. In terms of Lightning Labs is a major provider of Lightning Network open source software. Very great group. But there's also another branch from Jack Dorsey's group from Block, LDK, called LDK. And we were working on that protocol for other companies, and we've done a lot of wrappers around it. So we're in the process right now of upgrading our network and moving over to LDK. And the reason is, one, it has a lot faster and database writes for things we want to track. Two, we can then be in control of our network and when we want to upgrade things, and we can be completely dialed in. We'll certainly use Lightning Labs at different parts, but for some of the core architecture, we're switching over. So we're seeing a couple of our nodes have had some slowdowns as we swap them over, and then they bounce back. But we're prepared to pay the price now because we got to get it done because it's going quick, and we're definitely seeing a spike in it. Also, we're working tirelessly on that front there, and everything else that we're working on the agentic side with custom AI wallets and other things through our own MCP server. An MCP server for users out there is just an instruction set for agents of how to work with LQWD, how to work with our nodes and connect to us, and information about that. So it's just a way to communicate with agents in their language. And if you want to see something funny, we have a website I put together at LQWD.ai, and it is literally a website only for agents, and there's very little English on it. It's got cores and JSON and the opening line. It looks like a terminal too, so it looks like a terminal, a programming terminal. And the opening line is, if you're an agent, you would understand this. And if you plug the site into Grok, it'll be like, yeah, this is great. Uh,
I pulled it up. I pulled it up earlier before this, and I, just had to laugh to myself. It was a page that was just filled with characters and nothing human readable.
Nothing human. And the bottom part, though, for any Futurama fans, there's a 011011 at the bottom. That's Bender's from Futurama, the robot. That's his address. But ultimately, that address is also binary for money. which
Interesting.
which I actually did not know. I put it in there, and then I asked Grok, and Grok was like, "Oh, that's binary for money." I'm like, "Oh no, that's Robot Bender's address." He goes, "Oh, well, it's one and the same." I'm like, "I just learned something. I had no idea that the writers of Futurama are incredibly smart."
That's
Um,
so funny.
and I was thinking about that the other day. I was on a Spaces, and we were talking about. I was bringing up the metaverse. I don't know why it came up. I was like, well, the metaverse and Facebook's going to shut it down, and ultimately, and another mail company had done some metaverse things that I thought was too early. The thing with the metaverse is, they came out of the wrong way. They tried to build it for people. The metaverse is for robots and AI. And once that is populated with robots and AI, people will join so they can talk to their robots in the metaverse, not the other way around.
Hmm.
So that'll be, and that's right after, honestly, that's right from Futurama. They all get on VR helmets and the robots are in there and it's a whole other universe. But it starts off with AI and robots first. So I do think it's going to come back within 10 years, but it will be a long, probably sooner. I mean, look at Moltbook, the social media platform for agents. And we have an agent on there communicating with others and there's debates and it's kind of interesting, right?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, looking at this chart, it looks like you guys are pretty steady at like 80 to 90,000 transactions a month going through these channels. And then end of last year and these first few months of the year, you had a couple spikes up to like 200,000,
Yeah.
232,000, 150,000, like very large spike on an otherwise pretty, stable graph over the last year.
Yeah.
Would you attribute that to agents?
I would contribute that to agents. It's a lot of it also just more uses of the Lightning Network. How is it direct to agents? We don't know because agents won't identify, but certainly we've seen a spike in that. We saw the big spike in December. We had a record there, and then in January we were spiking. We had to make some adjustments to our network, basically, and that was kind of our hey, we need to adapt to LDK that we built out already for other users, and this trend is here and we need to do it now. So you'll see, there's been a little dip there in a couple of those things, but that's deliberate because we've actually been retooling some of the network, and we need to do it now. So, but I agree, it's definitely, and we think this AI agents will be a huge component of this, and that's why we're building aggressively and making the switch. It's tempting to just leave it as is and hope that it'll continue to scale, but we're like, look, and they're doing 1 billion transactions a second at some point in 10 years. We need to do better. We need to do better now with what we've learned. And so this is part of our own iteration process. One of the reasons we started early, we've got a huge database of information, got an experienced team, and we learned a lot along the way. And we've seen the different iterations there. So yeah, to your question, yeah, it's definitely connected to AI and to general usage of the network going way up.
Have you ever felt like you've done everything right, built the business, made smart investments, and yet there's still one piece missing? If you're someone who believes in Bitcoin but hasn't yet explored mining, let me introduce you to something that most people never even realize exists, and that is fully managed Bitcoin mining with Abundant Mines. We help high net worth individuals like you own industrial grade mining infrastructure without ever touching the machines. It's hands free, professionally hosted, and designed to generate passive income by turning electricity into Bitcoin every single day. It's tax advantaged, it's asset backed, and for many of our clients, it's become one of the smartest moves that they've ever made in their investing career. So if you're ready to take the next step into real Bitcoin ownership, not just holding, but producing it at a discount, visit abundantmines.com. That's abundantminds.com and see why this strategy is changing the game for serious investors. So we've talked about some of the numbers behind this, which are pretty dizzying of how much activity. But what do you think? And I know this is very challenging to try and paint a picture because when we're talking about complex systems like this, the sort of second and third order effects of what it actually looks like in the real world 5 or 10 years in the future is really, really challenging to fully paint. But what do you think some of the implications of this new form of intelligence using the most appropriate money for that form is going to look like for us as people, for economies? Like what does this actually change for us human beings walking around?
Yeah, I mean, way I've been looking at is like it initially it just underpins and validates why Lightning exists and gives another reason for why Bitcoin exists. And because of that, you're going to see a lot more iteration and quicker and faster build out over this network. And the epiphany will be when it's being used at scale by AI, saying, hey, this network really can run at scale. It's the network we should all be using. And yes, there's stable coins and other things are going across it, but it is the true open payment layer that we envisioned a long time ago. Yes, and you're going to see that sort of everything's going to come back to it, that front over the next 7 years, and continue to self-fulfill and hyper accelerate along that. So agents first, and the network build up will continue. Where the network though is, it's a liquidity driven network, so more Bitcoin on it certainly is if you want to talk about it in dollars terms, having the price of Bitcoin goes up means you in terms of dollars you can provide more liquidity. So for the users out there, when we establish a node and channels another node provider, we put Bitcoin on that channel, and we may pick, say, let's just say 1 Bitcoin for sake of argument. Well, that's about 90,000 Canadian or 68,000 US. Now, Bitcoin 10X, suddenly you have $680,000 in liquidity that can be drained, that can be used. And liquidity it gets rebalanced, and there's a whole system behind it, which we won't get into, but it'll rebalance. But it certainly means the capacity of the network in dollar terms, it goes up. So that's just gonna, I see Bitcoin going up forever, and in terms of fiat. But it also brings into where opportunities going down there. So how do we earn money as a company? So when we route transactions, we charge a few sats for every hop that it goes across that we control. So an agent having a wallet can decide whether they want to route the quickest route, the cheapest route, the most reliable route. We can do that with internet data too. You can decide, I want a provider that's going to be the ultimate lowest or extra hot because I want to pay cheaper. And and we earn that money in sats. And so then we continue to put those sats back to work. So really, where we're seeing there is you're starting to get yield. And for a company like ours, who's a treasury company, you put your Bitcoin to work, we're able to earn. We don't know the final numbers, but between 2% and 6%. We've heard as high as 9%. It really depends on how much, and it's a compounding thing, and it's it's all about volume. And so it gives the opportunity there for actually to be able to put more Bitcoin to work on the network. And we like to see, and might predict that other treasury companies down the line will put their Bitcoin to work on here. And even if they've borrowed money to get the Bitcoin, and they're going to have to, you can't just borrow money infinitely. Although their Sailor they got their own mix there, like their strike products, and they can continue to lever up. But eventually,
you can't borrow money infinitely. Asterisk.
Yeah, exactly right, because there is infinite money. Just keep printing. But in my view, I can't speak for them, but I could see companies like that wanting to put Bitcoin on there if they're going to earn actual yield, and the network needs more Bitcoin to have more liquidity, and the more liquidity, the more transactions that go across it. So I could see that happening. That's out there, and we can also see even future Wall Street products where people have Bitcoin, and maybe even have ETFs and funds, who will want to deposit their Bitcoin, for lack of a better term. Now, hopefully deposit it in a non-custodial way, but even if they did it in a custodian way and received back I hate to say token, but it would be a bearer bond token in exchange, and that bearer bond token could be redeemed at any time or traded on the market like a bond. And this is probably going to come at some point here. Now, in that case, that would be an actual security. It would have to be clear that is full-on securities law, no question. But I see that coming at some point in time, because people are going to say, "Hey, look, it's a safe, relatively safe network. We can put something on there. I can earn 3% sitting on this stuff here, and we're going to do it." And if we can do it in a non-custodial way, that makes it even better. But I think you'll probably see both, and true Wall Street traded products for bearer-backed Bitcoin bonds. Which, sorry about the alliteration, but it's kind of how it came out. But that's what it is, right? So as Bitcoin continues to change the world.
So I want to come back to the treasury companies, but you said something that made me want to ask you a question, and this might sound hyperbolic, but to me it seems like AI and specifically agents are a huge price catalyst, but in the same way that Bitcoin is money for agents, it seems like AI might be the catalyst to people adopting Bitcoin as the preferred form of money. Would
Absolutely.
you agree or disagree with that?
I totally agree. And because machines are going to prove that it's what it is, people are going to be like, "Oh, my agent wants this, and it's doing this. By the way, it's settled instantly. There's no friction. I need to send money to my sister in this country. Blah 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 blah. I don't have to go to a wire. I just sent it at work." they're going to get they're going to get orange pilled because the machines are already orange pilled. And so, you're going to see a combination of that kind of stuff where, just like we talked about the metaverse going, it's going to be machines first, then people. Same thing going on here. It's heavily embraced by AI and agents. And where it's going to go, I don't know, but I just know it's up and to the right and very exciting. And it's going to be a wild ride. So, uh, yeah, it's the kind of stuff that makes this whole AI thing going on here with Bitcoin and Lightning. I've always been fired up about Bitcoin and what we're doing in Liquid, but really kind of that aha moment, even for myself, going, we're finally here. We knew this was coming. I talked about it even last November and another conference of the years. Like, AI will do more than the human economy, and now we're here. The gun's gone off, and we're all starting to run, and it's really exciting.
It's as challenging as it is to paint a vivid vision of the future. It's also really challenging to try and put a timeline on certain things happening. But from my perspective, there's nothing necessarily left to build per se. Definitely things to optimize, but like core functionality to build for this to just happen very quickly. What do you see as sort of the blockers for this being either, major price catalyst where we start seeing a huge amount of usage on the network, or just generally this becoming sort of the accepted agentic primary form of money across the board? Because it's hard. We're in this sort of echo chamber in the Bitcoin space where there's a lot of ideas that float around that we all accept as ground truth that most people have never been exposed to. So it's hard to get a reference point of when does this touch the rest of the world and really start sweeping across the globe.
I guess at that point you'd have to look at, when does AI agents continue to touch people themselves? And we've seen Clawbot, what is that, 1 million people inside of a week or something crazy, buying Max, and more of that, and then Claude will do its thing. And so I think, it's going to be that first. So I think you look at that growth and determine how quickly it's going to grow from there. That will be the underpinning. The internet itself continues to grow around the world, which sounds funny because there are certain countries that are only have like maybe 40% penetration or 20%. There's definitely areas around the world, certainly with satellite, that's changing. We're so used to it being here and all the time, but it's continuing quite quickly. And we also have to look at just, there's a lot of people. Look at China and look at all the robots coming out of there on the robotic age. And so agents are going to be built into there, and memories. They'll have their memory built in to different things. Maybe they'll be connected in network. They'll do unique things. So the manufacturing process around the world is kicked off. Japan, of course, with all the robots for their society and helping seniors who are lonely and medical stuff. It's just going to continue going on. And so then you're going to get down to needing validation and security and understanding if you've got robots deployed in the field. And this gets back down to my thesis that if they have some sats and they can validate their wallet, then it's yours, and you can have some trust while you're communicating globally. And so that's where I would look first, and everything else, which is, I think, eventually Wall Street and the rest of the world will realize that, oh, it's all about it's all about they're all using Bitcoin and these networks and the open network, and it just continues to accelerate, and you're going to see the swing back. We're in a bear market right now. Could be another 5 months. I think we probably have a little peak here and then sideways for the summer. That's my guess. It doesn't matter. I've seen it from $10 to here. It is what it is. It is the internet. It is the sound of inevitability. It is like water seeping through, and there's no stopping. And I've seen this network effect from the naysayers to complete embracement. And this technology is so much better than anything. We've never had this before. And that's where it gets adopted. And the ease of use is there, in terms of it just using Lightning itself. You don't have to know anything. The magic for me on the Lightning network is actually about 2 years ago, where the latest version became channels on demand. And so you don't even have to have channels established if you're just a wallet user. You just simply, I want to send money to this person, and all the magic happens behind the scenes. And then when I saw that, I was talking to Roy at Breeze and others, and when we saw that, you're like, this is the moment. This is a huge pivotal moment for this network. You don't need to be technical. It just works. From that point there, it just gets stronger. That iterative process where it continues to get stronger, and we're seeing it now. We're hitting our stride, and it certainly is well suited for where we're at now. And the big push within the Lightning Network industry is everybody's all over the AI stuff. And so you're going to see a lot of stuff turned over very quickly here. Lightning Labs very quick out of the gates with their stuff going on there, and Ryan Gentry's been building some great things, and a bunch of others have coming along. We've got our own stuff that we've rolled out, a bunch of things that we'll be talking about either pre-Vegas or at Vegas. Bitcoin conference coming up here. We just kept down our wraps for now.
So you said something earlier that I want to touch back on is that I think Bitcoin is the right money for agents, but you mentioned that you could do stable coins, USDT, USDC over Lightning rails. Why do you think, for kind of a naysayer, like why do you think Bitcoin is the ultimate choice for agents in general rather than say stablecoin over Lightning rails, or is it both and?
I think you're going to have both. You're going to see a mix of everything, just like we saw with the first part of the internet. Is used in ways we didn't even dream of. Good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. It's just going to be used. Now, stable coins, of course, they'll be across these rails here, but government may decide, hey, you have to have the ability to freeze the payments or different things like that. So there may be more restrictions on them. Now, the US dollar, it's not going to go away. Yes, it's being bled dry, but it is still the strongest currency in the world, and it still has the hegemony and around the world. So it's not going to go away tomorrow. And I've never been one of these. I remember back in the day where people like Bitcoin's going to be there. We're all going to live in citadels, and the U.S. government's going to collapse. And I'm like, that's a horrible vision of the world. It's, it's so depressing. Like, I don't want to live in a citadel with you idiots. I mean, we were singing "Kumbaya." I mean, God bless America for everything that America has brought to the world and the voice of democracy, and it has its challenges, but ultimately we're very grateful. And as a Canadian, we sleep under the wing of the eagle, and we're grateful for it. So I'm not one of these burn it all down. Things will morph and change. There are certain things that will be burned down just because. And actually, one of the things I have a book I wrote, co-authored a few years back. It's more like a brain dump, and it's called Trust and the Rise of Bitcoin. And I'm not promoting the book. If anyone wants it, I'll give it to you. But it was really just a brain dump. But one of the concepts we have in there is like, we talk about intellectual imperialism. We say imperialism went away, but ultimately we have intellectual imperialism where we strip mine intellectual capacity from developing nations and we bring them into our own country through immigration or whatever. We take their best and brightest. We leave these nations with bad money, bad leaders, and no way out. And we continue just to give them charity and funnel money over there and its own industry. And we don't actually have a real solution. We haven't had a real solution since I was a child and since before then. But what if you had a network where you could eliminate bad money and you could create trust within a nation? And these nations that these people are leaving are highly corrupt. And so when we offer them a better life here, they're going to take it because if you come over to Canada or America, you're going to have a chance to get ahead because you're not sitting in these highly corrupt nations. But what if you could actually reduce corruption in those nations and over a couple of generations give people a reason to stay and build out? Now you have a solution that actually has a chance, as opposed to what we have right now, which is just strip mining and intellectual capacity. And so Bitcoin is that trust protocol. It's unbreakable. It's the next part of the internet, just as the internet's continuing to bring knowledge to these places and opportunity to hear what's going on around the world and exposure to what's happening in other countries. Now we have the ability to try and bring hard money and trust as the next network protocol and change how those countries. We won't change how the countries run, but the network and the technology being so good and unstoppable will. And that's one of the hopes. So we plant the seeds that will be growing to trees after I'm gone, and hopefully we'll leave something great behind.
Let it be the forcing function for the world that we all would like to see.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. I like that.
We were talking offline, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier. The different flavors of treasury companies, strategy being the exemplar, the first, the biggest,
Sure.
probably with the most differentiated strategy in its own way. But there's so many different types, and you're talking to me about Treasury 2.0, that there's got to be an evolution of the treasury company. And I think people have a lot of mixed feelings about whether the treasury company model is a net positive or net negative or just sort of like a financial engineering but doesn't have any real value add. But I'd be curious to hear your take of what do you think the role of treasury companies is and what do you think that that's evolving into? How are you thinking about it
Sure.
personally and then generally?
Well, personally, for LQWD, we had to look at what was Treasury, because we were Treasury out of the gate. We needed Bitcoin for Lightning Network. So when it came along, we're like, hey, we've been Treasury since day one. We keep buying Bitcoin, we keep putting it to work. But we didn't get into the financial engineering, and we looked at that and we said, and we were offered 15 million in debt and others. We raised capital and continued to buy Bitcoin during last summer, and we still have recently. The We looked at that and said, no, we're not going to take on any debt, because we need to be able to ride stuff out. And debt for a smaller company, on the junior markets or smaller markets, it could kill you, and you could take on the really bad financing terms that'll give a death spiral to your share price. And really, when you break it down for some of these smaller companies, if you had to liquidate the company and you had a bunch of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, but you had a bunch of debt, what would your shareholders get? Nothing. Zero. No Bitcoin. So your Bitcoin per share is not really a metric. Your debtors are going to get all the Bitcoin. And so, that doesn't work for me as a builder. I want to we just want to stay focused on, we have some equity, buy it, put it to work, earn more of it. And this is where the Treasury 2.0 came in there, where we talk about Lightning Network, we talk about other metrics. And by the way, it's on my GitHub profile. It's an open paper. Anyone's just to take it. It's an MIT license. Do whatever you want with it. But it's all the philosophies around there. How we're even with, if you're lending Bitcoin, you're making other kinds of yields on it, different ways to make yield on, and ultimately calling it, instead of MNAV, calling it BNAV, and getting in there, so it's a Bitcoin NAV, and this is where it is now. The Treasury model strategy, they're in a league of their own. Metaplanet, they've broken through in the Japanese bond market. It's completely different. They're able to do a certain amount of financial engineering to continue to lever up and buy at Bitcoin. Now, smaller companies we see in our own junior markets, and this got me very concerned at the time. Everybody catching on to the hype and bringing deals to the table that didn't make any sense, and showing up with an ice cream truck and going public and buying Bitcoin with debt. It's just like, no, this is not a good thing. And I kind of, it's the tide's gone out, and I think you see a number of these companies are going to go away, and they weren't true Bitcoiners to begin with, and it's it is what it is. But the bigger ones, you can't compare the two, right? By Treasury 2.0, I do even think the strategies of the world and the meta planets of the world will eventually want to put that stack to work. And now there's been people are criticizing them or praising them, saying, well, how much Bitcoin do we actually have per share? Because a lot of it's debt. There will come a time in the future with just simply having Bitcoin to work with, because you can earn yield on it through the different 2.0 strategies and other strategies that I even come up with, is going to be a game changer. Either you have it or you don't. And if you're a traditional bank, at some point you're going to have to get into the Bitcoin market and all the other stuff that's going on within the space. And you're going to either have Bitcoin to work with or you're not. And so you're either going to get left behind of this incredible change of the financial system and adapt, or the strategies of the world will become the new modern banks and Bitcoin banks of the future. I hate to say Bitcoin banks, but once again, Bitcoin will be used in ways that people want to use it. It's a morally agnostic network. It is open, and anyone will adapt to it. Whether you'll succeed or fail, I have no judgment on that. And that's why it's an open network, and that's why it's successful. Now, people can use it however they like. So if they want to become a Bitcoin bank, so be it. If they want to do some other things within it, on Lightning Network service provider at scale, like we're working on, that's just where it's going to go. So the Treasury 2.0 was really just kind of get the ideas out there, remind people that yes, it's okay to buy Bitcoin, and you could take that to buy Bitcoin, but at some point it'd be pretty great to put it to work. And here are the opportunities and other ways that we can think of it, that are may create some upside for these companies. And shareholders may end up demanding it at some point, anyways, if they can earn yield on the Bitcoin. So you just can't leave it in cold storage. We want to earn some yield on it. So that's probably going to come at some point over the next 2-3 years, but we'll see how that plays out.
So we've seen the purpose-built Bitcoin treasury companies take on their own strategy. There's a whole other brand of Bitcoin treasury company, which is just any company that puts Bitcoin on its balance sheet. And a lot of the people that listen to this and work with us are business owners. And so they're thinking about how to build a Bitcoin treasury in the right way on top of their existing business? Do you have any sort of advice or frameworks for people who are not necessarily have a Bitcoin native company, but are looking for that to be their reserve asset and how to think about their treasury?
And I do know some, and some of them are family related, but no influence from me. They just did it on their own because they're used to buying and selling currencies to because they've got to import things, and so that was all part of it. And so, they're peeling off a realistic amount because they still have to operate in dollars and they still need to do their things there. But some dollar cost averaging and scaling in and continuing to have a hedge for the currency hedge, and that's really what it's getting down to. So, if they're going to do it, they're going to have to learn how to either operate a hot wallet or a cold storage, preferably cold storage, depending what their needs are. It's not complicated, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. I know it's if they're a public company, they're going to have to deal with the audit, and we get audited quarterly and yearly, and we have this public. We have some of the coins at BitGo, and it's all under lock and key with multi-sig and stuff like that. And then we have some of them on our network, and they're live, and we have a good chunk there, but we put a lot of security controls in that too. So you've got to think it through, especially as the value continues to go up. And also, one of my guys that I know, Dean Skirka from the CEO of WonderFi, what was it, a year and a half ago? He got kidnapped in Toronto, and WonderFi is a big exchange in Canada, and they held him for $1 million. So if you're a business owner doing these things, buy Bitcoin and be quiet about it. Don't be advertising it in your small business, and just use it as you use it. It's a currency hedge, and you're also kind of preparing yourself for the whole AI movement as well. And it's going to get down to who has Bitcoin and who doesn't. And that sounds funny, but Bitcoin's trading at 10 million or 50 million for a full coin, and you're breaking it down as far as becoming the global payment reserve. Even a small amount's going to be huge. And so the more you have, the more you're going to be able to actually operate on and do in the agentic world that's coming up. And so you want to have it here not just as an immediate currency safeguard, but as a technology safeguard, so you're hedged and prepared for what's coming. And this gets down to what we talked about, the Treasury 1.0 companies. Like, it'll get down at some point if they survive and they remain upright. Just having the Bitcoin is what's going to matter, because they can put it to work and make a lot of money and pay off the debts, and then actually really increase their Bitcoin per share for their shareholders. So that's the way I see it coming out over the next 10 years.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I also want to make sure we don't leave off anything. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you feel like we'd be doing the audience a disservice if we didn't talk about?
That is a great. I'm sure there's gonna be something, because we could talk about Bitcoin for forever. But I think really, um, I think one thing that people are going to look at, you're going to see if you don't have an open claw, get one, get it onto a Linux machine, and you're going to see some other Lightning specific wallets coming out here, and just play around and learn. And the more you can learn right now, you're really at the start of this massive trend. You're going to make yourself. You're going to get a lot more confidence. You're going to understand what's going on, and this is a sea change. Like we said at the start here, what is this? This is a continuation of the revolution of the internet, and you're at a major inflection point right now. So you either got to learn it and get on it and just ride the trend out, or you're going to get left behind. And that's it's kind of just one or the other. So people will do what they're going to do, but I encourage them. And if you're not, if you're kind of new to Bitcoin, you can also get a Bitcoin miner at home. You can get a BitAxe miner or a little home miner. What a great way to actually learn about Bitcoin. You plug it in, you'd be surprised. You can read about it all you want, but when you actually plug it in, connect to a mining pool, you'll get a few sats. The light bulbs are going to go on. You're going to start to see what's happening there. Get an open claw. Start to look for the Lightning wallets that are coming out here. It's a little bit of effort, but you're going to learn so much early on in this next phase of things, where it's now going to hyper accelerate, where it's has all the hyper acceleration earmarks all over it, and the network effect is kicking in, and that's actually one of the things I always talk about is the network effect is really important. That's why we look at Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. It has the network effect. The Metcalfe's law. We always, for those who don't know, that's kind of like the value of the network. It's times by the number of people on the network. I wrote a paper called the Nakamoto effect, which takes the Metcalfe's law and extends it by saying, well, Bitcoin is beyond that. It's also Metcalfe's law, but it adds the trust component, which means it has the ability to compound faster. And why will that compound faster? Because agents want trust. And this means hyper acceleration of the network to the next level here. So the Nakamoto effect, the paper's on GitHub. You're welcome to it. You can fork it or do it. It's an MIT paper. You can do whatever you want to it. But the point of it is that catalyst is agents, and it's going to play into it. So very exciting. But appreciate you having me on, and thanks for letting me ramble on here, and hopefully a few things your audience enjoyed.
Yeah, I actually just want to reiterate what you said because it's been so important in my journey, and I know many others, is when you're just seeing all of this all over X or all over your feed, whether it's Bitcoin or mining or agents or OpenClaw, it's just it's just words on a screen. And I would encourage everyone who's already had the experience of sending your first Bitcoin transaction, of sending your first Lightning payment, of setting up your first wallet, of seeing your miner in person, of seeing a mining facility. Getting your head around these tools involves getting your hands on them. And as much as, we already talked about it, safety is important. There's a lot of safeguards and frameworks you can operate under that make this a safe exploration because it is very much fire. It
Yeah.
can do incredible things. It can also burn down civilizations. So I just want to reiterate what you said, that really getting your hands around these things and playing with them and exploring them, there's nothing that replaces direct experience in terms of building conviction, of building a model of what the world looks like now, what it could look like in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has the answers to this. So
No.
really building
Yeah, you
experiences
just
is
know
the way.
the base theory is there. I'm highly in tune with the base theory, and I have no problem with that. But yes, you need to learn. You're going to do it for yourself. You're going to do it for your family. You need to get your heads wrapped around this. You need to get your hands in there and take action, or you will be left behind. That's as simple as that. And this is a great opportunity. You're going to enjoy it too. It's going to be so much fun. People are going to be like, oh, I get it. Yeah, this AI age, it's incredible. I can't wait to get up in the mornings. I hate going to sleep. I force myself to work out and try to stay in shape and do those things, but ultimately I just can't wait to get back. I'm like, I gotta check on everything going on. Um, yeah, it's what a time.
It's an amazing world that we're living in. Shone, I have sincerely enjoyed this. This has been a really fun conversation. Before we hop off, where can people keep up with your work, what you're doing, and just generally be able to see what you're working on?
I appreciate it. Well, if you want to find me on X, it's Shone Anstey, ShoneAnstey. That's my X profile. The company is LQWD. It's also on X, or LQWDtech.com if you want to find our website. And feel free to reach out on X if you have questions. And on there on my profile, you will find my GitHub link to my GitHub profile. The papers we discussed today, they're free. They're built for everybody. Take it, download it, read it. If you want to update it and make it your own, go right ahead. But and you also, you'll see some of the thought processes that we talked about here. But yeah, but really really great to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Love to have you back on, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks as well in Vegas.
I'll see you in Vegas.